of the fact you're getting something out of it. So let's start right out with me asking you a question. I'd love to know, and if you could be so kind as to click yes if you agree. And again, yes is the green check mark that is found in the participants tab. If you open up that participants tab towards the bottom of your screen, you'll see the different icons you can select. So please select yes if there's at least one thing that you have learned or thought about differently throughout the course of this series. All right, Amy, you're the first one to say yes. So now I'm going to ask you, Amy, if you can unmute yourself, and it looks like you were anticipating I was going to ask you to do that. If you can unmute yourself, and I'd love to hear from you. What is that one thing that jumped out in your mind when you clicked the green yes check mark, and how has it impacted what you're doing at your organization?
So just the thought of learning to celebrate staff better. It was something we talked about last time because I always revert to food. Like, oh, you're having a rough day, here's a cookie. So I wrote down celebrating work anniversaries because I think that's a really great idea because it shows the value of we're so glad you're here and we want you to stay. And then I did take that step and reach out to my staff and ask what they would like, and it was interesting to see the responses. One didn't respond at all because he hates when people buy him stuff. One did respond but was like, I don't know, but I said hello friends ... and then asked a question, and he's like, it's just nice to know that I'm your friend. And I said, it's beer, isn't it? And he laughed. And so that was, he always has beer in the back of his car, I don't know why. And then the other gal, for her it was like TJ Maxx or things like that, so things I wouldn't have thought of, but knowing that those are ways that I can bless them, it was just nice to have that push to, well, ask them what they want. Because somebody had said a gas card. I didn't even think about that for the guys. Like even just a $5 Country Fair gas card would be helpful,
right?
Or something they would appreciate. And so that was my big takeaway. And
awesome.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So Christina, I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. You also clicked your green check mark, and if you could unmute yourself and put your camera on unless you're otherwise indisposed. And no problem, Susanna. I saw your message, but I'm glad you've enjoyed the sessions. So thank you for letting us know that. So Christina, are you in a position to unmute yourself and to turn your camera on? We'd love to hear from you. What was it that popped into your mind when I asked that question?
Kind of talking to what she said was kind of keeping everyone feeling included and everyone in the loop during these uncertain times, and even more so during all of this. We kind of discussed last week about communicating. Somebody said they'd rather feel like they're communicating too much with their staff and employees rather than have someone say like, oh, they don't care. So that kind of stuck out, like the over communication. You can never communicate too much about what's going on or what the direction is.
Okay. All right, very good. And in fact, I said amen to that in chat, because over communication is definitely nothing to be ashamed of. Well, very good. I appreciate you guys doing that and playing along with me for that conversation before we move on to the next part. And the next part is where we're going to pick up from where we left off. And I'm just moving a couple little windows over on my screen so I can have everything open in front of me that I wanted. You may recall me asking you to come prepared to talk about something, and that one thing that I wanted you to come prepared to talk about is what is a specific operational best practice that you have been able to think about in the wake of everything that we are all living through right now in our respective organizations, that has helped you to better serve employees and or your clients or your customers, something that you're really, really proud of, that you or anyone in your organization has thought of and really really put in place as an operational best practice in response to having to flex and meet the new demands of everything that we're all trying to work through. So Amanda, I would love it if you could please break us into our groups, and we're going to share within the group what that best practice is. So once again, the question that you are going to be discussing, we're going to give you 10 minutes, right, Amanda? Did we decide, Amanda and
Yes.
Aaron, it would be
Yep,
better?
we'll have 10 minutes and then there's going to be 120 seconds, so 2 minutes. In addition to that, that'll kind of be the close down of the room. So
Yeah.
once the timer winds down, there will be an additional 2 minutes before the rooms automatically close.
Yes, thank you. So once again, what you're discussing, each of you, in your breakout group is an operational best practice that you or anyone in your organization has thought of and implemented to better serve the needs of your employees, your customers, whoever it is that you're serving in the wake of everything that we're living through right now as it relates to the pandemic. Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Oh, it looks so glorious outside of your window. Is it sunny at your house?
It's not actually, but it does. Yeah, it looks a little bright. I'm sitting in a construction zone this morning on top of having to leave early. So if I keep muting myself, that's why. Pounding going on all around me.
No worries, no worries. Well, looks like we have a really good group here. So who wants to get started? And I'd love for everyone to share. So who wants to get started? And the way we're going to do it is whoever starts and goes is then going to indicate who the next person is to go to share an operational best practice. So each of us has about 2.5 minutes, right, Amanda? Or 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
Well, I'll go since
Okay.
I'm already talking. And this is probably one that is not unique, I would guess, given these times. But when when everything first happened early in the year, and there was so much uncertainty around it. We have a small office at the foundation, by the way. There's only 14 of us. We had a small group, 2 or 3 employees who volunteered to kind of be the task force team, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And they got together and spent so much time going through the needs that everybody would have, not only from a regulatory standpoint in terms of, masks and hand sanitizers and all that, but spent a lot of time finding out what would make people comfortable, or at least as comfortable as they could be when coming back to the office. And I just thought, at the time, and I am still, I remain impressed by it, because our office is geographically very dysfunctional. I always say we've got 14 people on 4 floors. Christina can attest to that. But we've spent, and thanks to this group of employees, I can't take credit, but we've spent a lot of time really thinking through all of the measures that would, again, bring anxiety levels down in a time that is so anxiety producing for everybody. So I was really proud of the way the team stepped up in that regard. I thought it was pretty cool.
Nice. And was it surprising to you how it is you came about doing it in that way? Did it come from someone who maybe otherwise wouldn't have come up with an idea like that?
Well, not so much. We have a couple of people who are really, really skilled in terms of thinking through real details. And so it wasn't surprising to me that they stepped forward, but I think what was really nice is to see them recognized for their efforts. And just kind of leading the way there. So, when I talk to some of my friends who work in other places, I really do think we've done a really exceptional job in terms of making people as comfortable and safe as we possibly can.
Good.
So that may not be really unique. I'd be curious to know what others think, but I thought it was good.
Awesome. All right, thank you. So who's next?
Oh gosh, you're gonna make me pick?
Yeah.
Tammy, you're not gonna hate me if I pick you next, are you?
No, I could never hate you, Susanna. But I miss you from Rotary.
I know. I don't know if we're ever gonna have a Rotary meeting again.
I know. I miss people. Well, I was sitting here thinking, and a lot of this stuff that I've done, but stuff that our James did, our CEO, is, we initially we had meetings every day, like twice a day, and then we reduced that down after a while. But I think just making sure that everybody still had like a plan. We talked to everybody about what their action plan was and reviewed their job description. And James set up teams to address a variety of, topics internally and externally. So I'm thinking just, so we didn't just continue on, we kind of changed things the way we do them, and everybody, we kind of kept in touch with everybody to make sure they knew what their responsibilities were. And Amanda can probably add to this, but certainly Amanda's probably, her job is one of the ones that changed the most, in terms of creating webinars instead of, in-person seminars, and our events, went virtual, and we've been trying to figure out how to do some events, and we've actually done some, we did our golf outing and things like that. So, so just a lot of discussion. And then we did put together like a return to work plan and, a form saying this is what we're going to do when we do come back, so we are trying to keep everybody safe and make sure everybody's comfortable. We kind of changed schedules with people, if somebody wanted to, work from home. We're all kind of working from home for the most part, but, flexible in their schedules. So I don't know, would you add anything, Amanda? So you can be next. Tag, you're it.
I would just add, I think from an external perspective, because obviously we have a lot of members that we need to be of service to. So I think just the policy of kind of no wrong door at the chamber. So, regardless of who a member reached out to, we made sure that everybody on staff was well versed in the resource page that we had on our website, any new financial assistance programs that were being made available. So, I think it really, business outreach really shifted significantly to be part of everyone's job at the chamber. I mean, it is to an extent always, but I think even more so just because so many businesses had questions and there was so much uncertainty. So I think sort of having that policy of no matter who you reach out to, you're going to get an answer to your questions. That I think was a smart shift on our part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just knowing who to go to and what to go to them for. Awesome. All right. So I believe, Miss Christina, we haven't heard from you yet.
Well, I work with Susanna, so I can attest to her, what she said about our office and the group of individuals that made it very friendly for safety, making sure that everyone's needs and were thought about. We also, I think that it kind of forced the foundation to think about how we do things a little differently. Like we did these, we've put them on hold for now, but I would see them continuing through the fall, midweek meetups, which were virtual, like meetings, webinars kind of things. And we never had that many donor events or other events throughout the year as we did with these midweek meetups, because technology allowed us to put them together much quicker than it would be an actual event. So it gave us actually an opportunity to kind of get in front of some of our donors and community leaders a little bit more, and allowed us to stay in communication with them, whereas different teams may have communicated more regularly with those segments, but as a whole, I don't think that we would have, if it wasn't for COVID and these virtual midweek meetups, had that much exposure that often. So that was a positive, that we kind of thought outside the box to offer those about a whole variety of different topics. And then we kind of surveyed what they wanted to hear from us and what we were doing. So that's something different that we did that we probably wouldn't have done or had as much exposure if it hadn't been for this COVID quarantine.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. And that's a really good example of a positive that has come from all of this. Yeah, absolutely. So because our friend Debbie, she doesn't have a microphone, so she's not able to join with us. She has been typing in her idea to me privately through the chat box. So I'm going to share with you what it is that Debbie had come up with. And an idea that Debbie had is for their managers meeting, or for their managers to be meeting with their team members one-on-one, and just checking in to see how they're doing personally, how everything's impacting them, and make sure that they have everything they need in order to know that they're connected, and in order to know that they have the support and the resources to continue to do their jobs remotely in the most effective way. So I think that's a great idea, Debbie, for sure. And, you know, Debbie and I were chatting back and forth privately, and even if maybe your organization isn't doing some of these things, the whole reason why we're having these breakout rooms and sharing best practices is so you can take ideas to your organization and be the change agent to get them looking at things a little bit differently. So we have 99 seconds. Anyone have anything else that you wanted to add before we return to the main session? No? All right, let's regroup with everybody. All right, everybody, we will wait for everyone else to join us again. Can you guys see my screen? It should be showing. Okay, good. I think 10 minutes was perfect. A lot better than the few minutes we had before.
Yes, I agree.
For sure. Christina, what industry do you work in again? I forget.
I am on the marketing team at the Erie Community Foundation.
Your Community Foundation, okay. Sorry, I couldn't remember what that was, where it was that you work. All right, excellent. Well, I believe we have everybody back, correct? Type a quick hello if you hear me and if you are back in action with us. Into the chat box, I should say. Okay, cool. Everyone's here. Nice to see some familiar names and looking forward to seeing all your lovely faces. Let me expand my screen so I can see your faces. All right, very good. So I'd love if you could unmute yourselves and let me hear from those of you who want to share. So how about someone who would like to share, if you could please raise your hand virtually. And again, you would do that in the participants box and hit any of the icons you feel like hitting there. It doesn't matter which one. But if you'd like to share something that you really learned a lot from that someone in your group had shared for that question that everyone just broke out into. And let's see. All right, going. I'm gonna call on someone. All right, so last call to hit a little tab in the participants tab. All right, I heard someone. Did someone try to say something?
Yes, it's Sabrina.
Sabrina, hello Sabrina.
Oh.
So what is it that you wanted to share from what your group discussed?
So one thing I hadn't thought about is the younger workforce, maybe people that are right out of school. I think Aaron mentioned this, that, you know, a lot of us on this call have worked for a number of years and been through a number of things. And so there might be, you know, increased anxiety amongst the newer or the younger employees. And I didn't even think about that. So that was a little aha moment for me today.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point, Sabrina, because a lot of times, I think probably all of us can relate to the fact that we tend naturally to look at things from our perspective, right? But that's very, very different from others. Absolutely. All right. Anyone from our group have anything that they wanted to share? I know that we had some great ideas. All right, so here's what I'm going to say. I was taking notes, and just some things that really jumped out at me. You know, 2 words were used by one of the members of our group who was sharing some things that they had done, and the 2 words were comfortable and safe. And this individual said, you know what, we just wanted to really make sure that we were putting things in place and having communication in place to make sure that everybody was not only comfortable as possible with everything happening, but also that they knew that they were safe. And those are 2 huge, huge fundamentals that the people in your organization need to feel, that the customers and the clientele and the donors that that you rely upon, if you're in a nonprofit sector, they need to feel comfortable and safe, that those in decision-making positions or positions of significant influence are making sure that there's a plan, making sure everybody knows what's expected. Another thing that was brought up, which I loved, was the fact that one operational best practice is the fact that the forced use of technology to interact, much like what we're doing right now through this series, has actually given this person's organization more of an opportunity to get in front of the community, to get in front of donors in an easier way, because the traditional methods, what were they? We had to coordinate something, find a meeting location, plan an event. It took longer to plan, right? But now with the use of technology, one silver lining is that they've actually been able to be much more responsive and much more proactive in getting in front of community members and their donors in a much more meaningful way and much more frequent way. So that's just something I thought I'd share. All right, you guys ready to move on? Okay, let's do this. So we're going to talk a little bit about some best practices, and much like what we did before, we're going to talk through some best practices, and then I am going to love turning it over to Erin, who I know you guys have already learned so much from, and we're going to see what it is that jumps out at her that she would like to cover. So as far as what to do, right? And these, by the way, these are best practice cultural recommendations that are critical at any given time, not just in the times that we are living, right? So think about it. Whether or not you're in a pandemic, circumstances are changing. Things are changing in your organization. We've all heard a million times, change is the one thing that you can always count on. So it's important as a leader who wants to establish the strongest possible culture, the most meaningful and impactful culture, to make it a habit of being intentional about defining whatever that new normal is for your employees. And if that new normal, based upon the changes you're dealing with, have necessitated you having to, revise, tweak policies, then make sure you do that, and make sure that you share that with those who are impacted. It's also really, really important. I know all of you are from different sizes of organizations, different industries, but it is so, I've been preaching this like never before, and I'm going to continue doing it. It is more important now than ever that you have the most competent person handling your human resource responsibilities and functions than ever before. Not that it wasn't important before, but because of the plethora of changes that are having such a deep societal impact, so, just social emotional impact, bottom line impact in your organization, impacting your ability to serve those that you're serving as an organization. If you don't have the best of the best HR resource who not only understands how to finesse the operational practices, but also understands the compliance related changes, which that's not something you can just quickly, Google and figure out. You need someone who's a true expert. So if there's one area that I would definitely encourage every organization to invest in, it is making sure that you invest in not just throwing someone in an HR type role of significant influence because they're a good accountant or they're good from the financial side of things. That's only one little element of HR, right? But someone who really gets it and is proactive and is really gifted in the other areas of HR too. That's really, really important, and we're seeing that. Also too, we talked about how important it is to act in a way that demonstrates a genuine concern. Erin gave some great ideas of things that she does in her organization. Erin, one thing I'd love to ask you, can you just speak a little bit about how, if at all, and I did not prep Erin for the fact I was going to ask her this, so you're going to get a real response here. Touch upon how, if at all, your intentionality at making sure you're conveying concern, care, and proactiveness about your employees, how has it impacted their productivity in terms of what you're seeing in the way of output in their roles?
So the people that report directly to me are the Director of Operations, Sales, and Marketing. So the majority of our team reports to our director. But I can tell you that just really making sure that when I do communicate with people, that I leave time to just listen sometimes. It's a time I feel like people want to be heard and understand. They want to know you care. And I've always said that I care about the person before I care about the work that they do. So really just being intentional about that has helped, and making sure that I'm a very results-driven person. Like I care most about results. And right now people care most about being understood. So really slowing my cadence and allowing some extra time has been very helpful.
Have you seen, Erin, because I tend to be like you in terms of being a very results-driven person, have you seen any obvious correlation between the time that you're investing at making sure that you're leaving that time to listen and making sure they feel heard to their ability to produce the results, or no?
I wouldn't say that I've necessarily correlated that. I mean, I think that we're even more cohesive team than we were before. We do measure utilization, and despite the fact that everybody's working from home, and we've onboarded and trained 4 people from scratch, all done virtually. So I don't know that I've measured what it's done to productivity, but I know what it's done to our cohesiveness and our sense of team. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's got, lasting impact.
Oh, yeah.
Beyond any team building we could have ever planned to do.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you very much, Erin. Think about relationships that you're in, right? Think about relationships that you're in where, you're the closest with another person. It could be a friend, a significant other, family member. Why are you close? Because you've been through something together. You've been through something really significant together, and you've come out the other side. So very well said. One question, Erin, that someone in the group had posed, Sabrina had posed, what are some things that you're doing differently as it relates to training and onboarding virtually? And actually, I'm going to put someone in this group on notice. And Wendy, you can type in the chat box if you're not in a position to do this, but I know Wendy is joining us today, Wendy Baum from Networking Technologies, and I know she's been having some great successes as it relates to onboarding virtually. So Wendy, if you're feeling up for sharing your best practice as it relates to Sabrina's question, we'd love to hear it, but I'll give you a minute to think about that, and I'm going to turn it back over to Erin. Erin, what are some things you guys have been doing to train and onboard virtually?
Well, I actually just realized last week that I haven't been very good at communicating. We have a salesperson that started 5 weeks ago, and I always know what I mean. I just sometimes don't articulate it to other people. So there are 3 of us that are responsible for different pieces of a new salesperson's training. And it occurred to me last week that I wasn't doing a very good job communicating what he knew and what he still needed help with. So we have a internal software system a ticketing system that we use for our clients. So I actually created 2 tickets for him. One is general questions, and the other is training updates. And so he's actually been really good about every week emailing me what he's learned and what he thinks he needs help with. I just wasn't necessarily good at communicating that to the other 2 people who needed to know. So now he puts that update and tags all of us in that ticket, and then everybody knows exactly what their role is the following week. So that's really been helpful. And we have used technology for years. It's pushed us to use it more efficiently and more effectively.
Okay. All right. Excellent. And I like that honesty, Erin, because you recognize, hey, maybe we need to do things a little bit differently. And you identified that as something that was a need, and you did, to make sure that you're getting the new employee up and going how you needed them to be. So Wendy Baum, and Wendy, thank you so much for joining us. Wendy has a really interesting title. I'll let her introduce herself, but she works at Networking Technologies. And I know that Wendy has implemented a lot of improvements as it relates to onboarding in the past several weeks. And you've done quite a bit of hiring for completely remote and virtual employees, I should add. So Wendy, tell everyone a little bit about what your role is at NetTech, and maybe just take a few moments to share some best practices for onboarding. I know everyone's excited to hear that.
Thanks. So I am the Chief Culture Officer, and we have onboarded 5 new people since the beginning of COVID. And we have been doing work right before COVID. We have been doing work with Decision Associates, focusing on our culture. So during this process, we've been developing onboarding because I noticed that was lacking. So we actually have been developing our onboarding, our first day, what that looks like, a roadmap. We also have 30, 60, 90-day check-ins that I do with each new hire. And they also check in with their person on the lead team, is in constant contact with them. But what I do is I have specific questions that I ask, and then just dialogue back and forth about, it's mostly about their comfort, how they're doing, are their needs being met, but also where we might have roadblocks in our company where they might be running into walls. And sometimes it's as simple as somebody said, yeah, how do I get office supplies? Like, how does that work? I'm like, oh yeah, like, how about some office supplies in your remote work environment? So it's been great, just like, duh, like, think of that. But I noticed, like, that's the kind of dialogue we have going, and feeling comfortable checking in and working together. We found through our culture assessment that people very much feel like they're part of a family, so we build off of that theme. And as we onboard new people and grow, hopefully beyond 25, how do we maintain that family feeling? So I'm continuing to do work. We utilize Yammer. That's part of SharePoint. It's like a Facebook for business. So we use that. We do on-the-spot recognition through Yammer. So people do shout outs and post all week. I do a drawing at our Monday morning meeting. And then I try to, with that drawing, do something very personalized. Right now it's a lot of Amazon, but we have one employee who does car racing on the weekends, so I bought him some tools for his cars. So that's just some of the things that we've been working on. Did I miss anything, Elizabeth?
No, you did a great job. Thank you. I know I didn't prepare you for that. So thank you for being a good sport. All right, so you guys ready to move on to the next? All right. So also too, another thing that I can't emphasize enough is how important it is to constantly revisit your existing policies that relate to flexibility in the workplace. You know, if there are certain roles that you can't be as flexible with for job-related reasons, or business necessity-related reasons, I should say, make sure that you don't just, you know, say, sorry, you can't do this, but you have to explain in advance the big picture to everybody about why you're able to be more flexible in one area, but not another. You know, we've done a lot as it relates to the temperature checks and social distancing and cleanliness, staggering work schedules. So I'd be surprised if everyone wasn't already pretty well versed for that. So one of the things that has been a huge, massive shift is the fact that, as you can see now from observing everyone's background, right? Take a look at everyone who's joining us today. Everyone is in varied backgrounds. Some of us at home, some of us at work in the office. But that stigma that has once been lifted, or that has once been in place, has now been lifted. Erin, anything that you're noticing specifically as it relates to that stigma being lifted, that work from home stigma being lifted, anything specific that you're noticing that you haven't already covered at Verify as it relates to that?
I don't know if I'm in the minority or the majority on this. This is just my opinion. Our entire team is still working remotely.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fine with that because it's working, people feel safe, and we don't have to deal with all the zigzag back and forth of regulation changes. But we're still at work. It's still a professional Zoom call. I was on a Zoom about 2 weeks ago with a group of people, and it was a professional Zoom. It wasn't a friendly little happy hour, and someone had their dog sitting on their lap, licking their face, and some other gentleman was sitting in his bedroom with his headboard. He's obviously sitting at the foot of his bed with his headboard. I get we're working from home. I get the stigma's lifted. I have two pet peeves. First of all, it's still professional. Could we keep it that way? And number two, people understand that things happen. You're late, your dog barks in the background, your kid screams. Like, you do not need to interrupt a productive meeting to apologize for it. Just hit mute. Let everybody keep going. So that's been, I would say for us, you know, I was always on Zoom probably for the last couple of years. I've done a lot of Zoom. My team hadn't necessarily done Zoom, and they don't especially like it. So giving them the permission to have the camera off if that's what they want. But if you are on camera, it is still a professional call. We need to keep a professional level. I would say that's the biggest thing that I've personally noticed with work from home and the stigma of it.
Yeah. Really, really good points you make that I'm sure a lot of us can relate to. And I don't see anybody in their, you know, bathrobes or fuzzy slippers. So that's good. Actually, you could be wearing fuzzy slippers and I just can't see your feet.
Well, in full disclosure, there was a couple weeks ago where I had on a dress shirt and yoga pants and sneakers. So, I mean, you know, as long as you can keep it professional from here up.
Your secret was safe with us. So Erin had asked a question of Wendy. Amanda. Amanda's wearing fuzzy slippers. Yeah, no shame in that. So a question for Wendy Baum from what it was that she shared. Erin had wanted to know the difference between a private Facebook page and Yammer. You know, so Wendy, any comments on that?
So I will say the reason I did not do Facebook versus Yammer, I stumbled across Yammer when I was looking for some different ways to communicate. But the thing I like about Yammer is a lot of our employees or some of our employees don't want a Facebook page. They don't want to be on social media in that way. They don't want to be responsible for it. Yammer is just our in-office app. It's done with their office email. It's just communication for our staff. So I think that's the difference with between Yammer and Facebook. It's just a way to keep it within the company. It's kind of like Teams and out in emailing. Like, it's nice to have communications and channels and Teams where we're specifically working on things. I don't know about you, but all of a sudden my email is inundated with work and we're working on a project, and now I'm searching through my email trying to find, okay, where was that email about this project that we were working on? There's ways to do that in Teams where it's not being buried with the outside world and interactions I'm doing there.
Mhm. And
Does
you
that
guys,
make sense?
Thank
Yeah.
you.
that does. And Wendy, you use Microsoft Teams platforms, right?
Yeah.
At
Yep.
NetTech. Yeah. You know what I would definitely encourage, Amanda, does everybody have each other's email addresses and contact information? Because there's some really good idea sharing happening in the chat box. And after today's session, I would love everybody to have a way of getting in touch with each other and keeping this conversation going. Because I know.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to send out the list. In fact, I was going to mention that at the end of today's session. If anybody would prefer me not to include them on that list, just send me a private chat and let me know. But otherwise, I was going to send the contact list, just emails, to everybody who attended the sessions. So if you want to continue the conversation after the fact, you can do so.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. So, love it. So now we're going to talk a little bit about a guide to creating a culture that actually delivers results in the wake of everything going on. And, you know, there are benefits and there are drawbacks, of course, of working remotely. And you can see what those are right here. Many of the benefits and the drawbacks have already been spoken of during our first two sessions that we've had together, and also from learning from what it is that Erin has had to share with us. But the one thing I want to really hone in on the most is the fact that there's a bigger pool of candidates that you can recruit from. I mean, now more than ever, we are personally seeing clients who a year from now would have said, no way, they have to live here and you know, in our hometown, and they have to relocate their family in order to work here. They're actually saying, you know what? No, wow, this has been working pretty well in terms of having virtual employees. So heck, let's blow the doors of possibility wide open. And I'm willing to hire someone who lives from just about anywhere. Erin, you have someone you had mentioned who lives in a beautiful, luxurious tropical location who no hate on Erie, but I'm fairly certain they wouldn't have wanted to leave that location to move to Erie. But now they're working for you at Verify. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I know there are some people on this call today with us who maybe haven't dipped their toe in the water yet of doing that. How has it worked having someone so far away working for you?
I mean, it has its challenges as far as you just need to be more intentional. The first person I ever had work remotely for me was probably about 12 years ago. So we've been doing this for a while, but it was a whole nother thing training somebody remotely. Mm-hmm. That definitely has been challenging. We had an outline and a training manual that's helped. But again, it just forced us to really use the technology in a more meaningful way. And, nothing has to be revolutionary. It's really just kind of what is our culture, what have we done before, and how can we use technology to adapt to that. So it wasn't a matter of recreating anything. It was just how can we use technology to continue what we've been doing.
Okay, thank you. And one thing I want to say as it relates to training, and I just put a comment in the chat box, but one thing I want to say as it relates to training that I've personally noticed is Microsoft Teams is really good, especially if you're dealing with people who are within the same network. But the second you try to deal with people and bring them in who aren't within your network, it's much more limited in terms of the functionality that you're able to use. That's just something that I've observed. Wendy Baum, what are your thoughts?
I was just going to say that agreed, Teams works well within your organization. Also, I would a lot of businesses and companies, because of the remote environment, all of a sudden are engaging the tool in a way that it was never engaged before. So I noticed Teams is doing constant updates right now, but there's hiccups along the way. We've run into, Elizabeth and I have run into problems with meetings disappearing off of calendars. That's happened quite a few times. So I think Zoom is still a viable platform. It's still a better platform for like breakout sessions and some of the work we're doing when several entities are coming together. If it's just you and your business, your company working within Teams, it's still pretty solid. But I think the platform is still growing and going through a lot of updates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Good point. All right, awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. We talked about intentionality and how important it is to make that communication feel real. I would love to know, how many of you and if you could please go into your participants tab and raise your hand if you agree with this statement. How many of you have felt like throughout this series, this group of us who've come together week to week in this way, that how many of you have felt pretty connected and engaged throughout the time that we've been together? So if you could just raise your hand if you felt that way. Okay, so Amy, let's see. Sabrina, do you mind if I call on you? And I would just genuinely want to know, what is it that you have observed in the way that this group has been coming together the past few weeks, completely virtually, that has made that communication feel real and feel connected?
Okay, honestly, Elizabeth did not pay me, but it's you. And it's how, seriously, it's how you know how to use the technology. You're not afraid to tell people, if you can, turn your if you're available, turn your video on, making us or asking us to interact. This is the most engaging Zoom call or series that I've been on. And I mean, I'm sorry, but it's all because of you, Elizabeth. And so I'm like trying to learn as much as I can to emulate what you've been doing. And again, this was not like, she didn't pay me. This was not planted at all.
Can you see? I'm blushing. No,
I have been on calls that people are all off. And I just want to say, you know what? And I'm not leading it.
Right.
So I just want to say, you know what? If you guys aren't engaged enough or don't want to turn on your thing, why are we even doing this?
Right.
Why are we even, let's just do a conference call.
Right, exactly. Why are we even trying to come face to face? Absolutely. Well, that was really nice. And I literally am blushing. So thank you. It's hard to get me to do that. So I appreciate that. All right. And I see some other people have their hands raised, and I wish I had time to call on all of you, but I don't. So I'm going to continue on, because there are a few more key points I want to make sure that you all receive before walking away. There are some very specific things that you can do to prepare everyone in your organization to work remotely. And you can see right in front of you some ideas that I'm just throwing out there. Make sure that everyone has what they need in order to participate virtually. And Sabrina, what you said it kind of really showed a spotlight on that. I wanted to make sure that you understood how to use the technology, you understood how to engage, you understood the rule of the road, right? From the very beginning. So that's an example in a very small way. But Erin, what are some examples of best practices that you've implemented at Verify to best prepare the people who work with you to work remotely?
So again, nothing, I'm not going to tell you anything earth-shattering. At work, one of my roles is oversight of sales and marketing, and I'm forever saying the easiest path, and our clients and our audience have the answers we're looking for. So when I look internally and we're trying to figure out what makes people more comfortable or productive at home, it's back to the same thing. What's the path of least resistance? And they have the answers. I don't need to assume what they need to work efficiently from home or what they need to be comfortable. It's just a matter of periodically checking in and saying, do you have what you need? Is there something that would make it less frustrating, more comfortable? It really just letting them tell me what they need. As long as it's within reason, I'm going to make sure it happens.
Right. And to quell the concerns of some people, I don't think it's anyone in this session, but maybe some of you work for people who are kind of fuddy-duddies when it comes to still completely embracing the new times that we're in. You know, a lot of people will say, oh, I don't want people requesting some wild and crazy things. Erin, have you had any crazy, outlandish requests, or has it truly been pretty consistent with what you would expect people to need or request?
I mean, there was the normal things like their office chair, office supplies. I asked who wanted a second or even a third monitor for their laptop because people are used to working with 2 or 3 screens from home. That pretty much revolutionized everybody's work from home to have the multiple screens. There hasn't been anything crazy. I think I thought the funniest request was somebody had very specific office supply requests, what color paper she wanted. It needed to be lined, colored pens. She just wanted fun Post-it notes. Honestly, for $20, if that makes working from home more enjoyable for you, it is money well spent.
Yeah.
And I would say, you know, I think from, you know, everybody on our team is fair and reasonable, and the requests have been fair and reasonable. And like I said, for $20, if that makes you happy, I'll do it twice.
Right, absolutely. And small investment gives you a huge return when people feel that way.
Yeah, and I think sometimes with great intentions, I think sometimes people are overthinking how easy it actually can be to keep people productive, to let them know they're appreciated. Because what you don't want to do is come off as contrived or fake. I mean, I'm an authentic leader. People know that I care about them. So the fact that I'd be willing to spend $20 for office supplies that somebody wanted is not a surprise to anybody else. It's very consistent with our culture. And so it's just a matter of what is consistent with your culture, because the one thing you don't want to come across is disingenuous.
Yes. People can see right through that, can't they? Yeah, they can totally see
Mm-hmm.
that. So everybody is going to receive a copy of this slide deck, because there are a few things that I would like you to see that we haven't had a chance to get to. But what I would like to do, that I would love to ask is, and this just gives you, you know, some final thoughts, but I would love to hear from each of you. What has stood out for you most in this series? How will you put what you have learned into action? And what will be the impact of your actions? So I'd actually love to have one final breakout, and it's going to be a fast and furious breakout. It's going to be 5 minutes. That's it. Before we then reconvene and we say our formal thank you, farewell to one another. But I will definitely make sure I share the slides with Amanda afterwards so that everybody can see all of them, especially the 3 or 4 slides that we didn't get a chance to get to. And those slides are really straightforward and don't require a lot of dialogue. But I want everyone to learn from each other one final time. What has stood out for you? How will you put what you've learned into action, and what will be the impact of your actions? So Amanda, can you break everyone into a breakout group? And if you could actually do it for 3 minutes, since it gives you an extra 120 seconds so that we're back together in 5 minutes, that would be awesome. And thank you for those of you who are able to hang on. I appreciate it.
Sure thing. Here we go.
Chat. So what do you guys have to say? What are what is your answer to those questions that I had posed?
I think just now what people were talking about, making sure people have the tools they need to be successful. So we're not remote anymore. We're all in the office, but I just had a new person start this past week. I have another one starting this coming Monday, and even just having conversations today of like, whatever you want, just let us know. Like, don't hesitate to ask. And I think reminding people of that we want you to succeed. So you need to tell us what you need to do that, and encouraging. And I guess that goes with the connection too, of making sure you're connecting with people so that they know you're on their side and that you want them to succeed.
Right, absolutely. Okay, very good. Thank you. Let's see, Christina, what have you got?
I kind of feel like I answered this in my last breakout session, but just kind of realizing that we can be effective in the office, out of the office, be real flexible with everyone's schedules and kind of meeting people where they are. The comment about $20 worth of Post-it notes and colorful paper was kind of cute, because it's like, if that's what brightens people's days and makes us, feel better about working when life is crazy, like that's great. And that's like the positive mentality to have, is just really letting people's work show for themselves, rather than, are you sitting in your chair from this time to this time or whatnot?
Right, exactly. And Debbie shared for her answer, it was the importance of staying connected and the different ways it can be done creatively. So thank you. And yes, people love their fun stationery, man. I'll tell you that. Debbie also said she is, excited to take some of these ideas and put them into practice at her organization. Tammy, anything really quickly you wanted to share?
I would just share that I think it's a good reminder to just, because this has gone on so long, it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind, and getting in, just remembering that, people still need to be recognized. They still need to be talked to. And it just makes it harder, because you can't just say hello in the hallway and how are you doing? What do you need? To make more of an effort to do that. And so just a reminder to remember to do that, reach out to people.
Yeah.
Being very intentional about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's very,
you have to be more intentional now.
Yeah.
Because you got to make, more of an effort, concerted effort. That's all.
Absolutely. And you know what else? This just totally popped into my brain. But some of us are more extroverted, some of us are more introverted. And actually, one good thing about having to use technology a lot more is that those who tend to be a little bit more introverted, it's going to be easier to help them feel connected as well, because it's not as stressful for them to be forced into that face-to-face interaction and dialogue. So that's something to think about as well. It gives you a whole nother opportunity to connect with people who tend to be a little bit more introverted, and it kind of levels the playing field in that way. So kind of think about that. Think about people in your organization who might be a little bit more on the introverted side of things. How can you take advantage of this forced use of technology in ways that we didn't have to use it before to connect with them in a meaningful way? Just something that popped into my head. All right, let's return to the main session. Okay. All right, so we're waiting for everyone else to rejoin us. Here they are. Okay. So thank you so much, everybody who was able to join us. Hopefully you're able to get something out of those conversations that you just had with your group. But I wanted to throw a question out there that Sabrina, who did have to, she had a meeting at 11, so she had a hard stop. But since everyone's getting this recording, I still want to throw it out there to everybody. Sabrina had asked a question. She said, hey, does everybody else on this call, I believe what she meant was, does everybody else who's participating in this webinar series have a specific wish list for their office? And I wanted to just, because I try to make sure everyone's comments through chat and everyone has a chance to have that engagement and interaction. So any comments on her question? Anybody want to jump in and have something to say? And don't forget, all of your microphones are muted. So you're gonna have to unmute yourself. So does anybody have a specific wish list for their office? I imagine what she means is something that, I'm not sure what she means. Maybe a wish list that you give employees a chance to fill out what it is they'd want, kind of like what Erin was talking about, or something
like set up for a home office, like I'm missing a chair, I need some Post-its, I don't have, you know, I need a mic, my mic's not working well, I need a headset, I need an extra monitor. Do you think that's what she meant? Like kind of a checklist?
That's how I'm interpreting it. And Sabrina, I know you're not with us, but you'll be hearing this on the recording. Hopefully we're answering it properly. But yes, that's how I'm interpreting her question. So just raise your hand, your virtual hand, in the participants tab if you have something like that. So it looks like nobody has something like that. You know what that means?
We
It means it's probably a darn good idea. It means it's a darn good idea that we all need one. Great idea. Thank you, Sabrina.
Yeah, just real quick to comment on that. I don't know that the chamber, we necessarily have a list per se, but I think there are, like, as we've gone through certain situations, there have been items that have popped up that it's like, oh, it would be really nice to have this. Like not all of us had webcams, and finding a good audio solution for our staff calls because some people were in the office and some people were at home. So making sure we could hear everybody clearly. So it's been more situational, but it's largely been related to tech related stuff.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
I would add too that some of those things were hard to get a hold of. Like I ordered cameras for our computers, I don't know, months ago, and finally just found them. Just got them in. So it's just, you know, there was a rush on all this stuff. It was my biggest wish list is everybody to be able to come back in the office and be normal again, I think. But you know, I know that's a ways off. That's all.
Yeah, I think all of us would love for things in certain regards to be like it once was, but the one key takeaway as we prepare to wrap is, you know, sure, we long for how things once were, but let's really reflect upon how things can be moving forward in ways that never would have forced our hands to change for the better if this hadn't been thrust upon us. And no one was asking for it, and nobody has a rule book to follow about what the best thing is to do. But I definitely appreciate the time that everyone has taken to come back week to week with one another. You've all shared amazing ideas with each other. We've been very blessed to have Erin Green from Verify be a part of this. Erin, I learn from you every time we talk. But thank you. I really hope you guys keep the conversations going and take advantage of this new network of contacts from everyone who's been a part of this series, and Amanda will share that information out.
Yes, I will be sending our final follow-up email. In addition to the list of contacts and Elizabeth's slides, I would just ask that you all take not even 5 minutes to complete the survey that's going to be included in that email. We like to send surveys out after all of our programs just to gauge how you thought the program went. And then so as Elizabeth and Erin hopefully present this again in the future, they can make any necessary tweaks to the content to align more appropriately with the needs of the business community. So if you just take a couple minutes to fill that out, we would appreciate it. And you will also be receiving a certificate of completion since you've gone through the whole series of the program. So you'll be receiving that via email a little later today. So thank you again, everyone. We really appreciate it. Hope you learned a lot, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Erin and Elizabeth, do you want to just stick around?
Sure.
Sure.